Start now by educating yourself on how markets work and finding out what is right for you. Invest in yourself and then invest in the markets. That's one of our sayings here on the Laptop Trader channel. Welcome back. This is Phil at the Laptop Trader channel. Welcome back to our community. You can find the channel at Laptop Trader. My email contact is laptoptraderphil@gmail.com if you have any questions. I'm just here to share my experience and give back to the stock investing and trading community one video at a time. We do one of these per month. Quick disclaimer, most stock traders lose money. Please protect yourself at all times. Nothing discussed in this video is trading or investing advice. This channel is for information only. Please seek qualified help if you need help investing. And this is a beginner's channel just to introduce you to the stock market. Half of this month's video is going to be a quick presentation about supply and demand. So why was the Bronze Age important? So if you have studied history or have been interested in human achievement, certainly the Bronze Age is one of those interesting times from the past. We still use bronze, copper, brass, gold, and other commodities today in our society. These items are readily accessible to anyone that wants to use them or purchase them. But why was this time in history called the Bronze Age? Very simply, people made a leap forward in metal technology, and it became popular and widespread, and was in high demand for the first time in history. This product became a driver of economic and military activity at this time. It kind of took over the market and became so useful that new methods and new supply of this material became very valuable. To me, this is a story of supply and demand. New technology creates new demand, and then supply seeks to fill that demand. Bronze became very, very valuable. As investors, this is one of our main jobs, is to try to figure out where are the new opportunities and demand in the current marketplace. 2023 and 2024 were clearly a time of semiconductors and microchip demand for new AI computer technology. Therefore, these companies in these industries saw huge demand for their company stocks, NVIDIA being the most well-known. Because supply and demand are ever present in an economy that is free to evolve, there will then always be opportunities for individuals and businesses and entrepreneurs and investors. This channel hopes to help you uncover for yourself some of these opportunities using some basic techniques for you now and in the future. So what other ages or industries stand out to you? I just thought of a few off the top of my head, such as the Middle Ages and or the Renaissance, where maybe something like marble was very popular, and then paper became popular with printed materials, and even education became a focus during the Renaissance, where people became more thinkers, right? Education became important there to try to use your brain a little bit more. How about the industrial age and modernization, such as industries such as steel, packaged foods, oil, and cars and automobiles? And then I thought of maybe the information age and the dot-com era, and companies such as eBay and online commerce, Amazon, Apple, and the personal computer, along with Microsoft and Google, using your computer to search for information. Well, what's next? Nobody knows for sure, but clearly space exploration seems to be more popular than ever. New energy sources, faster ways to use information, medical technology, and how consumers use new items or materials, etc. So nobody knows for sure what the future holds, but we can always try to speculate and try to look for investments that may stand out to us. And what makes something valuable, right? So in a very simple way, the demand for something makes an item or commodity or service valuable, and this includes stocks of companies. The more demand there is for a stock, the more valuable it becomes. Now you will see news and articles and discussions on what may or may not be valuable or what makes something desirable, and this information may drive or even help to create demand, but supply and demand are at the core of value. The more a product or service is accepted and used and consumed, the more value it has, especially if supply is not keeping pace with that demand. As an example, you may see a quarterly earnings report news article about a company you follow, and it may be a good report in your view. However, the day after this report is released, your stock gaps down 15% and you are surprised. I mean, this does not make any sense. Business looks good, but supply came to market and you are at the mercy of this supply and the stock sells off. Now, it may be the economy, monetary policy, industry news. Maybe there's a new CEO, maybe there's a possible war on the horizon, interest rates, etc. And there can be many factors that can be around the supply and demand of any company. Now, if and when demand comes back, the price per share should go up again if demand overwhelms supply. Now, this cycle is really out of your control. I don't want you to get hung up on news or earnings reports. Just be aware of them. And I read the news and I check out earnings reports because those are significant events. But what you can do is choose your investments wisely and limit your position size in any one stock or company to prevent a catastrophic event to your portfolio or your personal finances and investments. Sometimes as traders we refer to this as blowing up your account, and this happens. Now every month we look at some price charts to try to identify supply and demand. So let's continue. Now there's some other terms I want you to be aware of for supply and demand using technical analysis. So these are some words you may be exposed to. Just understand that they basically mean or are synonyms for supply and demand. So there's on a chart you will see support and resistance. You may see wide range candles or bars and the amount of volume traded or volume spikes indicating higher than average supply or demand. So you may notice a stock in an uptrend or a downtrend, right? Ever increasing prices or ever decreasing prices. Is the stock or service or product popular or unpopular? Is there growth or growing or a declining or decreasing words such as increasing or decreasing revenues? Can you see a gap up or a gap down in prices, especially if it's a surprise where there was a gap and there really wasn't any news, there was no upcoming report? Are there new highs or lows in price, showing increased or decreased demand? Finally, is there indifference or is there excitement? Is there an excitement or a frenzy around your investment, or is it not so important, like a stage 1 stock that price is just not moving? What are the emotions around the product or service? Is there indifference to that product or service? Think of people waiting out in the cold just to have a chance at a new iPhone. That would, in my view, be a pretty significant sign of demand. So again, things are clues to look for when trading stocks. We're looking for directional clues and supply and demand. What stage are we in? Are there any wide range bars or candles? Are there any range expansion bars? Right, a larger than normal candle. Is there a gap up or down, especially on earnings and or volume? Is there a shock or an unexpected gap? Is there a reversal bar, either up or down, or is there a shock or a change in character to the stock or company you're watching or researching? Are there any topping or bottoming tails or wicks on the candles on the chart? Now I just want to bring this up. What is money? Well, money is just a financial tool. It inherently is worthless, but we apply a value to it. And there is emotions around how valuable money is. So money can buy almost anything on the planet, and more money can buy more things. However, there are a few things it does not buy, and you're welcome to add to this list. But how about salvation after you die, love, and happiness come to mind, right? We've all seen these wealthy individuals that just don't seem happy. They can't find love. They, they go through multiple divorces, and they just don't seem to have a very satisfying life, even though they may be rich and famous. But we must try to control our emotions as traders and investors and be as cold and analytical as possible. I know it is not easy, and I have my faults too, but it is essential in making good decisions. Just think of supply and demand and money as neutral and a tool to put supply and demand in your favor. So this is just a quick chart of Coca-Cola Company. No particular reason I chose this chart, but we can see supply and demand kind of coming into and out of the share price of this stock using a candle chart or a what I would call a bar chart. Well, actually, a bar chart's a little bit different. This is a candle chart. This is a 5-year monthly chart. So each candle is 1 month of pricing activity over the past 5 years there. So we can see it's in a very slight uptrend over this period of time. You can see there's some smaller candles, there's some larger candles, there's some green candles, there's some red candles, there's some earnings events in there. We can see on the bottom the volume profile goes up and down. And there's just, I didn't choose this for any reason. I just wanted to give you an example of a chart, just kind of showing some supply and demand. And what do you see on this chart? Do you have any questions about this chart or any chart? What would indicate to you supply and demand using each candle, right? I think I pointed out here with this arrow that this bottoming tail candle was a significant candle that preceded this rise in price. This actually kind of a dramatic rise in price, really, over almost a 1-year period. Whereas before we had kind of this back and forth, red candles and green candles and red candles, and finally we get this bottoming tail candle with a slight increase in volume, and that's just seemed to totally change the character or the direction of the price of that stock. So that's all I'm trying to show there. So I'll leave that up for a few more seconds while I take a drink, and then we'll get on to some current pricing and some current events in this market. Anyway, let's go to some live charts. Let's take a look at the markets right now for this month. I don't want this video to get too long. I really want that to sink in about supply and demand. Now, we've discussed stages before, and I do use stage analysis in my trading. But that's one of the things about stage analysis and how the different stages imply different emotions and different stages of supply and demand. So here's a chart, our monthly chart of the SPY or the S&P 500 as an ETF, and we can see in February we actually made a new high, and now in March we're starting to see some selling pressure or supply or less demand in the S&P 500. Okay, that's all we're looking at there. These are all going to be monthly charts. If you guys want to do more research as to potential trades, I will leave that up to you. I've got a few ideas this month for you, but that's where we're at with the SPY. We're still in an uptrend on the monthly time frame, but clearly demand is not as strong as supply at this time. Same story with the NASDAQ or the Qs. We can see, pretty nice uptrend. We get a topping tail in December, showing increased supply and less demand. We get a new lower high and lower low. In January, we actually made a new high in February, but then sold off. And you can just see lower low there. And now in March, the selling seems to continue on increased volume, by the way. So right now, there's definitely selling pressure in our two major market indexes. Small caps as measured by the Russell 2000 made a new high in November, and since then has been selling off for the last 4 months. So very clear picture of more supply and less demand there. The Dow Jones Industrial Spider, DIA, or as referred to as the diamonds. This sector or this industry sector made a new high in December and has since went kind of sideways with some more supply and less demand here in March. So the market is definitely under selling pressure at this time. We'll then look at the transports, similar picture. Clearly not as much demand for transportation. Let's get to some individual stocks. Here would be, again, a picture of just indifference, right? Stage one, price has been stagnant for 2+ years, okay? That's a major cannabis stock. Let's take a look at some others. Grove, a picture of indifference, right? A picture of stagnation in price. There's not a lot of demand, and there's really no supply because there's no demand for it. These other two we won't look at. This would be the ETF for cannabis, symbol MJ. Another very clear picture of stage one, actually almost a continued stage two. Stage four selling there. We just made a new low in March on the industry in general. So, but you just don't see the demand there, do you? How about, here's a fairly sizable mortgage, I think they're a mortgage processing company, United Wholesale Mortgage Holding Company. A little bit different look, right, versus the other two where there's indifference. Now there's some more emotions to this chart. We can clearly see kind of this uptrend into maybe the third quarter of last year, 2024, and then we had supply come to market. So we can see that selling right there. And now maybe demand is starting to pick up a little bit right here. We kind of put in this floor or this support area. Okay? So that's what I see on that chart. How about Prologis? This is a real estate company. I believe they're into real estate development and commercial properties. more of a picture of a range where we have a very clear support area around that $98, $99 area, and then we have a clear area of resistance right up here. Or we could just put a line right across the top of all of these candles, right? And see a very clear resistance area or a supply area around the 135 area. Okay, so this stock, in my view, is just in this range. It's in a range between supply and demand. This is United Parcel Service Company. This stock is clearly in a stage of selling. It's a clear, not a very dramatic, but in a very clear stage for downtrend. We've recently had some volume or increased buying and selling activity in January, February, and March. So is this a time where maybe this stock could turn around as we have above average volume, but we still have basically average size range on these candles? Okay, so could this be a turning point? We don't know just yet. It may be a turning point, but we just don't know just yet until we see more evidence of increased demand for that company's stock. Okay, how about Pfizer, well-known medical manufacturing company and drug company? What do we see on this chart? Very clear. We can see all the stages. We can see, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and then a stage 4 sell-off. Okay, and now we're back to stage 1, basically. We've got very small candles, almost again, a stage of a difference. We have some increased volume. So could this be a turning point for Pfizer? We won't know for sure. One thing we can look for after we've looked at the stages and in general supply and demand is we can go down to maybe a lower time frame to look for clues as to is demand increasing or not. And right now it looks like we've kind of hit at the very least like a floor, right, in this stock where we've kind of hit this floor down here. It's went back and forth, over this time period. We can clearly see where demand kind of picked up, and then, there was some selling, and then demand has kind of picked up again. So it's just a back and forth picture right now on Pfizer. So I would say that at the current time, it's really just like this sideways trend. Okay, so very easy, very basic to see that on any time frame. Here is a company called Tapestry. We had a clear uptrend or a clear stage 2. You can see the demand, right? There's just green candles going up, and all of a sudden we come into March and we have a lot of supply come to market, maybe profit taking, maybe a bad earnings report, but we don't need to really worry about that as technical traders. We can just see, wow, there's really some serious selling going right now on increased volume, and so demand is clearly lessened in this stock, and supply is coming to market. Very easy to see on that chart. NASDAQ company, another picture of selling here in March. Okay. How about Cardinal Health Company? We can see a very clear stage 2 uptrend. Made a new high here in January. Higher low in February, not a new high, and now another higher low so far in March. So this is still in a clear uptrend, at least on this time frame. Now, another term I forgot to put in the presentation was something called relative strength or relative weakness. So can we see quickly that this is still in an uptrend, showing relative strength compared to, let's just use an example, UPS. Okay? In other words, UPS is going down over this time frame, and Cardinal Health is going up. So we can see relative strength and relative weakness there as an investment, okay, in picture form. We don't need to have a PhD in economics to see this stuff. That's one reason I have this channel, is to help average people figure out what is a good investment and what's not, okay? Here would be a real estate finance company. I believe it is a REIT, or a real estate investment trust. We can clearly see, right, stage 4 selling into a stage 1 where we've got this wide range, and then we can see the range tighten up, right? You can clearly see that there's a tighter range here versus back here. And we can see here's a bottoming tail bar, red bar, then a green bar showing demand, then red bar, now another green bar showing demand again. So we also have at this time increased volume on average. You can see how these last 4 months have increased volume, or perhaps increased interest in this company. So this is one, and I'll just be transparent that this is a current position for me. This is a current position, current stock I'm already in as a longer term investment that I expect, based on these charts, to go up. And I'll give you a couple of reasons why quickly related to this month's topic. And so we've had this long period of indifference, or stage 1. We've had this back and forth. First buyers are in control, and sellers are in control, and buyers are in control, and then sellers come back. And now we've kind of had this month come up in February, and now March, we have the start of this candle above most of these candles, which indicates to me that this stock may be on the move, or the start of a new stage 2 uptrend. So let's go to a smaller time frame. Let's look at a weekly time frame, okay? Here again, we can see just the back and forth battle between buyers and sellers, okay? Now, interestingly, after this period of selling, price moved up, and then the following week, price moved down, and then the very next week, price moved up again. So this is where we see buyers kind of squeeze or sandwich the sellers right there. That creates a real problem for certain types of investors or traders. And usually after you see that, usually price goes up. And now we've got just a small candle here for this week. Now if this continues up, I expect price to continue. I expect demand to continue over this area. If I drew a line across all these weeks, right, we can see that up here, we're starting to get into an area where there is very little supply, okay, or very little resistance. We can also see this on the monthly chart. We can see this area up here where there's very little supply and very little resistance, right? Everybody that has already sold has sold. It's like there's nothing left to sell, yet people have this demand for this potential demand for this stock. That's what I see on this chart. And then on daily chart, which for me is my action time frame, we can just see that we had this gap down. We had some back and forth pricing. We've got a low. We've got a higher low. We've got another higher low with this huge red candle, which was a surprise. And then right after that, we have immediate demand, or immediate buying, which pushed price right back up above that selling candle, okay? And then we had some more back and forth, and now it looks like we just made a higher low again. And we can also see, as a tool, this blue short-term average being pulled up by price. We can see the red line, which is a long-term moving average, is just flat, and even the green midterm average is also kind of flat. But we can see in the near term, over the last month, price is starting to creep up. Okay, so that's why I'm in this stock in a small position on a small basis here early, expecting that not only the sector of real estate, but this specific company looks like we may be entering a new uptrend. Again, there's nothing guaranteed with that analysis, but that's kind of what I see right now based on those clues. Okay, and there's just a few more. Uber, I do have a position Uber right now. That's more of a stage of again, back and forth, where buyers and sellers are kind of battling it out between each other. Is demand going to win or is supply going to win? We really don't have a for sure on Uber right now, but I like the company and I think they're here to stay. AT&T, clear stage of demand. You can clearly see the demand from AT&T there from the bottom since July of 23, right? So how many of you guys were investing in AT&T back in July of 2023, expecting AT&T to go into a new stage 2 uptrend? Honestly, probably most of us didn't pay attention to that, but it came on my list because it started making new 52-week highs. Okay, it started moving up, and then it came onto my list through a search. So I got involved in AT&T, somewhere back here. I forget where it was, but that's how you can use pricing and charts to help you get into an investment and get on the right side of a market. How about DoorDash? How many of you guys think about the supply and demand relationship when it comes to home delivery or immediate, that day, man, I want something, can I get it here now? And that's where companies like DoorDash and Instacart and even local companies are getting in on that new service. Okay. So these are the things I think we should be thinking about. How about Walgreens? What stage are we in there for Walgreens? What do you guys notice about that chart? I have a small position at this time in Walgreens. How about something like streaming services? How about this one? Curiosity Stream. How many of you guys have heard of and or subscribe to an entertainment streaming service such as Netflix or Tubi or what's another one? Hulu or Paramount or Disney. Well, how about Curiosity Stream? What stage are we in there? Okay. Is there an opportunity there for Curiosity Stream to be a part of that market or maybe a significant part of that market? We don't know. But clearly streaming is a modern convenience and a very popular service for many reasons. How about consumer staples, right? I think everybody over the last few years has felt the pinch of increased prices and has felt the pinch of maybe stagnating wages or even decreased wages for certain industries. But there's always some demand for consumer staples, right? Because these are things we buy and use repeatedly on a regular basis. And what do we see? We see a little stage 2 into a stage 3 or perhaps a new stage 2. Okay, so this happens too. We have these patterns that kind of play out and it looks like it's just going to go flat and then it starts moving up again. Okay, that's what I think may be happening now in consumer staples. We see some increased demand over the last 3 months. And I think consumer staples is an area that I want to be right now. And part of that would be another individual stock, CVS. So we can see this was sold off to a point where I think investors are like, that's a valuable company. I think I would like to own part of CVS. We see price moving up. And the interesting thing about this chart is not only do we see price moving up, we see a price spike on the way down. And then as the price moves up, volume has been going down. So you don't always need volume to go up for price to go up. What you need is demand at a certain price. And then as long as investors are going to continue to buy CVS at higher prices, my investment should benefit from that increased demand. Okay, so that's what I see right now. That's just some examples. I hope that helps you guys. If you find this content valuable, I expect and appreciate you to share, like, and subscribe to this channel. If you have any questions, again, I've given you my email contact there at the beginning. And I want to say have a good month and have a good luck in your investments.